Thank you for tuning in to this week's of Justice Watch Radio with attorney Zulu Ali. I'm Michael Bilal Clark, along with the rest of the Justice Watch crew, Rosa Nunez, Dr. Keel Bashir, Andrea Rodeman, and Paulina Hitter. This week, like every week, we'll be discussing legal and social justice issues in our community. This week, we will actually be talking about the vice presidential debate, as well as should Congress invoke the 25th Amendment in the bill. And so here we are without our captain, without our chief of the ship. And so there's no repeats and there's no reruns on this show. The show must go on even with our crew members. And so it has left us to deliver the message to the people.
Yes, sir.
So
Yeah.
we back to this vice presidential debate. We're gonna, discuss this today, and we're gonna discuss the highlights, the lowlights, and who took the show to fly as well.
Exactly. That's very true.
So Rosa, let's get with it. Let's talk about this.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, the vice presidential debate has definitely been a controversial topic this week. A lot of individuals have been talking about, as you mentioned, the fly that was on Mike Pence's head. So that made the show. But as compared to the presidential debate, it was a very more insightful, considering the fact that, obviously the Republicans were a bit more calm and composed this time around.
Mhm.
And we also had Kamala Harris, who's, very knowledgeable on what she's doing. And lots of very important topics were discussed. And one of them that was really mentioned and mentioned at the beginning was that of the coronavirus.
Exactly.
As we know, the coronavirus has characterized the United States as the country with the most deadly results, considering that our death toll as a percentage of the population is higher than almost every other wealthy nation on earth. In fact, our death rate is 2.5 times that of Canada. And so this topic of the coronavirus was discussed by Mike Pence and Kamala Harris. And one particular thing that came up was the fact that, you have the moderator ask the question of almost like, what do you think about the 200,000 deaths in the United States? And what would you do in your presidency if you do win the presidency? And what have you done, Mike Pence, for alleviating all of these issues and these things that have been happening with the coronavirus? To that, he basically says that President Trump acted in full force in really addressing the coronavirus, because he didn't really include a mandatory mandate of any sort, because he was respecting the American people. He was respecting their freedom, and he was respecting their ability to choose and think for themselves in a way. So that Kamala Harris obviously responds, you know what, is that really respecting the American population? Shouldn't you tell them what's going on so they have time to prepare for something that is so lethal? Because if we think about it, this administration was told about the seriousness of the coronavirus back in January 28th. And even after they were told about the seriousness, they really refused to mention it to the American population, and it was seen as a hoax in the beginning. And so in this context, what is the meaning of respecting the American population? I think Trump is definitely somebody who has brought a different agenda into the presidency, where if you hear about a national security issue, you don't really kind of put it out there for the American population to prepare and to be, on edge, because that's what he feared, supposedly. But what is respecting the American population? Should we have been told of the seriousness of the coronavirus back in January? Or did he act well? Did he act as the commander in chief by not telling us?
Wow. I think that the American people should have known from the beginning. Of course, like you say, it gives them the opportunity to at least prepare, and in that debate also that was brought up in regards to that the response team that had been put in place by Barack Obama as well as Joe Biden.
Yes.
That response team that was there in case of incidents or case of things like this to happen, they completely got rid of that response team. And so had that response team been in place, maybe it would have saved thousands and thousands of lives. And right now, just the way we look at it, I mean, he was deceitful in not telling the people.
Exactly.
And who would want to trust someone like that to be their commander in chief and not to be able to, give the American people the truth as to what's going on? So as to them being able to prepare for such a travesty,
Yeah.
Mm.
So, you know,
Well, I'll say this. First of all, it wasn't a debate. We've got to be very clear in the use of terminology.
True.
What I think it was an envisionment of a one-sided power base that has been utilized to dominate people. And I think what we see on a societal level, you saw in a very minute mini scope of exactly how the power structure has been operating in this country for the last 4 years. You had an individual that did not feel that he needed to respect the womanhood of Miss Harris. You had an individual who felt that their agenda was the superseding agenda, and that agenda was the only thing that needed to be heard.
mhm.
And lastly, you had a very evasive individual that didn't feel that they had any obligation to answer any questions as it relates to the American people.
Exactly.
So when you look at the whole context, I think the behavior within itself was the best indicator of the response to Corona and everything else that has been transpiring in this country for the last 4 years.
Very true. And I mean, when you mentioned that it almost seems like a one-sided agenda. Yeah, this whole presidency has been a one-sided agenda.
Yeah.
And knowing that these are our collective views on how a president should act and should respect the American population, can we say that perhaps maybe he didn't tell the American population about this coronavirus early on because he knew that the minorities and that people of color were going to be the group most affected, because we see it now. One in 1,000 Black Americans have died of the coronavirus in the United States. It has been one of the groups that has been most affected by the coronavirus. And if they don't do anything about it, 1 in 500 by the end of this year would be dying of the coronavirus. Can we say that this was in a way a power tactic to eliminate minorities? Because he knows that the people that are most going to be affected by this coronavirus are going to be people of color.
Doc.
I think you're spot on with the concept, but I think you're giving the man too much intelligence. I think realistically, he thought that it was not going to affect him. He thought, from the context of being able to put out a narrative that this thing was going to just go away, etc. I don't even give the man the ability to see that far. At the end of the day, though, what I will say, Rosa, to your point, I think those around him should have seen that. I think those around him knew that the direction of where this thing was going to go based on past experiences of these same type of medical situations or crisis. There should have been a much more proactive plan of attack to deal with that. I think when they saw, based on the social conditions and the social narrative, which goes to your point of who it was going to affect, they did not think it was going to get in the populace that they find themselves in. So I do think to some degree that they felt it was not going to touch them, and they could basically let it go by and move the process forward. Him personally, no, I won't give him that level of intelligence. I will
Yeah.
not.
And I think from the beginning, of course, he came out and called it a hoax,
Yeah.
as though he didn't believe in it himself. And I think after a while, once he realized that it was not a hoax, I think that his response should have been greater. But by the fact that he knew exactly who it did affect, his response was totally different opposed to what it could have been. And so therefore, once he did realize, I think there was a lot more that could have been done. I mean, of course, he said he wanted to close down this border. He wanted to close down that, but I think that there was a lot more that could have been done that could have saved those lives. And I think that the way he responded to it was really beyond him as being a president.
Well, when you think about it, look, listen to what you just said, Bilal. And this is when I talk about his lack of intelligence. I am not disrespecting the man from a humanistic perspective. A strategist, a general would make their adjustments. When I
Exactly.
see
Yeah.
that the battle is not going in the direction I want, I'm going to call in my best experts. We're going to sit
Yeah.
at the table. We're going to strategize. What do we need to change? What do we need to alter? What do we need to bring in, etc.? None of that was done. And this is my point of the lack of intelligence. They felt there was not a need to change. They felt that the direction was fine. And it just shows you the lack of the level of intelligence that did not go in to the process of dealing with this crisis. You let a crisis turn into a traumatic situation, which turned into a catastrophe, and that's where we're at right now at the end of the day.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you definitely have a point with the fact that they didn't think that it was going to hit the base that they thought, because even with eugenics and the whole racehorse theory that he's trying to push with his supporters, that, like he said in Minnesota, a crowd of 80% white, you have good genes in Minnesota. You have good genes, you will survive, kind of thing.
Wow.
That's kind of saying, hey, you know what, we white people are superior and we will survive this COVID-19.
Yeah.
So even in thinking about, his whole mentality of like not telling the American people, and perhaps thinking about who would affect, and if he didn't think about it, even just the whole fact that he believes in eugenics, and that he's trying to push this idea that white people will survive, and that white people are the cream of the crop because of who they are biologically. That in itself, I feel, has a lot to do with how he responded to this coronavirus crisis.
Yeah, and I think that he actually went against a lot of people who told him to go in a different direction with this. There was that behind the scenes that we did not see, that there was, that conflict in between him and his top, his generals or whoever it was. He's one of those type of presidents where he see fit to do, he's gonna do. But don't touch that dial. We'll be right back on the other side of this break. You settled in, Rosa?
Yes, sir.
My throat's still shaking.
You rolling, Rosa. Wrong spot, Bilal.
So with that, so that basically just covers like the whole, in a way, the idea of the coronavirus and what was discussed. But maybe I think I might ask Paulina like what she thinks and what's her view on all of this.
Yeah.
I can hear you guys.
Yay! You're next,
Because
Paulina.
sometimes I can't hear you guys because they'll play the radio track in there, but today they didn't, so now I can hear you guys right now, which is really nice.
Oh, you can't hear the radio track right now?
Yeah, right now, I mean, on my ear I can because I called in, but usually what it does, it'll also have like the commercials on here. So then when you guys talk in the break, I and Andrea usually can't hear you guys, but for some reason today it's not happening, so I can actually hear you, which is really nice.
So I'm wondering.
It's weird.
I think it might be this, right? Because this seems like a loner. So.
Yeah, our audience are listening, but we have.
What we do.
Yeah.
What we do.
Now you guys are muted. No, I can't hear you guys. I could hear you before. If you pull those out again, I can hear you again.
I just muted it.
Perfect. Hear you again.
Yeah. Welcome back to Justice Watch Radio. with Attorney Zulu Ali and the Justice Watch crew. We're going to continue our debate on the vice presidential debate and all that went on there during that time.
So, Polina, what is your opinion on all of this?
On all of this, well, now that we talked about Corona, I agree with all of you guys. I feel like our president had a lot of knowledge of a lot of factors that he didn't share with the population when he was supposed to, especially when we're looking at the European countries and the Asian population that has been dealing with the whole virus already for 3 months. And now there's us rolling in 2 months later and being like, oh, we should close down now, but now it's already too late. So I feel like I totally agree with you guys. He had a lot more knowledge. He did not. With a statement saying he wanted people to think for themselves, people can only think for themselves if you give them the information to think for themselves.
Exactly.
This information has not been given. So nobody had the choice in freedom of speech to think for themselves. And I think that already is the biggest proof of all the things that this president has done in the last 4 years.
Wow. Yeah, spot on. I mean, it's true. They didn't even have the ability to think for themselves because they didn't have that information, like you say. And well, now just moving forward on other things that happened this week, we heard of Nancy Pelosi, who came out and basically is saying that they want to enact the 25th Amendment on President Trump. This has been done before. This 25th Amendment was enacted back in 1965 when obviously we knew of the death of John F. Kennedy. Nobody could take over and they didn't really have a clear direction. So Congress gets together and comes up with the 25th Amendment, which basically says that Congress can take over and have power, or the vice president, when the president is seen unfit for office or dies in office. And so they're trying to enact the 25th Amendment on Trump on the basis that, you know, he has coronavirus, but we really haven't been getting the full picture of and all of the information with regards to how he's doing health-wise.
Exactly.
And we have heard from various experts that remdesivir, the antibody that he was given, one of the side effects is actually that it creates delusion. So Congress is coming out and saying that they want to enact the 25th Amendment because we're not receiving the health information that we are supposed to receive as the American population. But is there, like we were talking before, is there another maybe another cause as to why they want to enact the 25th Amendment? Do they see Trump as an unfit president already because of everything that's been happening? I mean, 200,000 people have died on his watch.
Yeah. Well, I'll say this, Rosa. If it's going to enhance his delusionalism, then we're definitely in trouble. But I think that it's twofold. And like I say, he's 74 years old. You know, he's the second oldest, or the first oldest. He's the oldest president, right? The oldest sitting president.
The oldest.
And I think that if he does have coronavirus, I think that this is the appropriate measure to do in order to put something in place just in case something like this happened. But I think that there was something else to this opposed to just the coronavirus. You know, just all of his statements that were made saying that he wasn't, even if he was, you know, not reelected, he was gonna stay there. Nobody was gonna remove him. Yeah. So I think it plays on both sides. I think it prepares people that even if the coronavirus, something happens with him there, then they'll be, you know, put in a position where they can remove him. And even if he stands up and say, I don't want to leave office, this will also put Congress in a position to you know, be there to remove him. So I think it's two poles to it.
Well, you know, I go a little bit further. Look, we will never surpass what we tolerate. You know, and Brother Zulu always brings this point up all the time. You know, we have a bunch of cowards in the political system that have not been fundamentally standing for the people that they're supposed to represent. I would say any and everything that we have to do to stop this man's canceristic aggression in terms of the destruction of the individuals in this country, we need to do that. We need to get people with some backbone that will stand up and tell this man, you know, what you're doing is incorrect. We're not going to allow it, and we're going to do everything in our power to stop you in that process. Look, he is not going to stop. What does it have? What has to be proven at this point to say this man needs another opportunity, another chance, or whatever? Those people that have the ability, that are in that power structure that he finds himself in, should have long ago did everything in their power to stop the aggression. Because what happens is when you allow an individual to take that type of mindset, that type of mentality, and that's what happened with white supremacy throughout this country.
Mm-hmm.
When you have a person that is not stopped, and they get comfortable with what they're doing, they're going to keep on doing it and doing it and doing it until they run up against a brick wall that says you will not do it anymore.
Exactly.
And at this point, this man, his administration, and the cronies, the cow downs that aligned themselves with him, has not done anything to impede the progress of what they're doing. So he feels that he doesn't have to stop. He feels he has carte blanche. And so whatever we have at our disposal to stop him, it needs to be implemented. And even if we don't have it at our disposal, we need to find something else and make something else that will stop this ingratiated idiot from doing what he's doing.
And I do think, I think it's true that I think Congress is seeing something that we as people might not be seeing entirely. And I think it's the fact that, he has appointed over 200 judges under his term. He is about to appoint the third person into the Supreme Court. Bush v. Gore was an election that was decided by the courts. And I think that he does have some sort of power, some sort of idea of trying to take this election to the courts, because he knows the power that he's able to have there. And he's already doing it. You look at this past week, the Yale versus Trump case. They literally filed a court case against Yale because they said that they're discriminating on whites and Asians on the basis of the 1965 Civil Rights Act. So they're basically using affirmative action as a way to say whites are being discriminated on the basis of racism at the entry of these Ivy Leagues. So I definitely do think that Congress is seeing things and it's preparing for this next election, because he does have a plan. And I think one of his plans is to be able to get this through to the courts, because getting it to the courts will be easier for him to take this. What do you think, Paulina?
Oh, I agree. You guys are completely spot on. I mean, this whole thing just smells and looks fishy. I don't know. There's just so much that feels so untrustworthy, because we couldn't have trust in this president because we never had it from the begin with. Promises have been made, not followed through. There has been more negative effect in this country towards its people and even the other countries outside. I mean, he exited the whole climate change situation. It was screw that. That stuff doesn't bother us, the Americans. And it's just all these little things. If you look at, no, for real, like if you look at how he ruined his relationship to one of his closest allies being Germany, that's just incredible. So of course, I feel like people that work with him are starting to realize, people are preparing, and they should be careful. Because something's going on and it doesn't seem right. And what else is going to happen if he gets another 4 years?
Well, I don't think those people that are working with him are starting to realize. I think they're starting to see the possibility of their butts on the fire. And so they're going to try to shift gears. You can't shift gears 3 weeks before election and say that, I'm changing direction, because you have not held this man accountable for over 4 years. So, at the end of the day, this is your own self-preservation that you're looking at. But I think the legacy that has been put in place is way too late for that. So we're in agreement, Paulina. I think the rationale is different.
Yeah, no.
Most definitely. And I think that it's the people should be able to see what's going on by now. I mean, I can't see one thing that has been good for the American people that came up out of this presidency. But don't touch that dial. We'll be right back on the other side of this break.
You guys, I feel like there are some comments we should address. I can't hear y'all. Think you're on mute. I think your microphone is muted. Just on the app here. Can't hear anything yet. Nope. That's so weird. Let's see.
Welcome back to Justice Watch Radio with Attorney Zulu Ali. They come and hunt him down for those taxes, he already have something in place. Because that's another issue in terms of him, basically, not being able to be honest with the American people. Is that him not being able to pay taxes, and I think that's critical. We all sitting here as citizens paying all our taxes, but here it is, the person that's commanded us the most is a person that's not paying any taxes whatsoever.
But see, Bilal, I think it goes much deeper than that. I agree with you, and I'm so glad Rosa brought up the Supreme Court, because at the end of the day, what does the Supreme Court supposedly in this country represent? It represents the ultimate law of the land. So I don't need a president in place. I don't need a Congress in place, if I have a domination
Exactly.
in terms of that supreme law of the land, I can get everything that I want passed for my way of life and my ideology. So that packing of the courts, and this is where I think the Democrats have really failed in that event, in that venue. We have not put the counterbalance in place to represent specifically our methodology, et cetera. So if he gets that, and he probably will, the way it looks,
Yes.
get that individual in that position, there's going to be what, a 9-3, a 9-4 representation. Look at the imbalance in terms of the mindset. So I would implore the Democrats, if they win the presidential office as well as the houses of Senate and Congress, to expand that court. There has to be some type of counterbalance, because this whole perspective, just like what we're supposed to be representing, the justice system and the imbalance in the justice system, we see the same thing with the supreme law of the land, doing the same and representing the same thing. So whoever gets in that position, if it's Democrats, they have got to use every mechanism they can to try to create some degree of balance within this country in terms of what this country is going to look like at the end of the day.
Yeah, and I think the Republicans are very knowledgeable about the power that they have, like you mentioned, in the Supreme Court. And you think about what they're doing now in the Senate and what they did to Obama. You know, all of a sudden it's okay for someone to elect and appoint somebody to the Supreme Court right before elections.
During an election.
But yeah, during an election. And they didn't even allow Obama to do that, you know? So I think that they're very knowledgeable about the power that they have in this arm of justice.
But that goes back, Rosa, to, you know, the Democrats always playing safe, always trying to be fair. Let me tell you something, in battle, you do whatever you need to do to make sure you can win that battle, especially when your opponent is playing with an advantage that you don't want to recognize. The Democrats have got to launch the same degree of force, fire, et cetera, as they move forward, as the Republicans have in terms of establishing foundationally the power base and the methodology that they want to operate from. You know, playtime was over a long time ago, where Democrats need to stand up, get tough, go to work, go to battle, and do what's necessary, and quit playing by a set of rules that nobody respects.
Yeah. And we actually have been reading our comments today, and we have a comment from one of our viewers. It says, Trump will win in a landslide. Stop blaming everything on one person. We watched for 3 years the far left Democrats use distraction after distraction that partially the blame why we, the Americans people, wasn't prepared for the virus. Be a little responsible as a people. Stop playing politics with this information.
Well, I would respond to that person. It's like that narrative of the two individuals running a mile, but yet we've got valleys, we got brick walls in front of us, we got glass out on the track, we've got some people standing there not letting us get by, and we're supposed to be running a fair race. Quit relying on a false narrative or your perception of things, and take a real good look at what truly is going on in this country and the imbalance in terms of what has transpired. You want to start off with an even playing field, then we can look at how far we can go and get. Nobody's looking for a handout. For us to survive, as long as we survive in this country with the type of demonic narratives that we've had to face, that within itself should be saluted. Nobody's looking for nobody to do anything for them. What we're saying is, get the hell out of the way and let us do what we need to do and what we have to do. Playtime is over.
Exactly.
Yeah. And I think to the point that they make that we're blaming it on one person. Well, you see, we're the wealthiest country in the world. And it just so happens that our death toll as a percentage per population is higher than every other wealthy country in the world. Not only domestically, but in the world. We are the wealthiest country, the world power. Why do we have 200,000 deaths? Why do we have people dying with the coronavirus? Well, because obviously it is a virus, it's a pandemic, it's lethal, but we have a commander-in-chief that didn't know how to handle this. We have the European Union, our allies, who are suffering, but guess what? We have the highest percentage of deaths to a percentage of a population.
Yes.
You know, and it's because of our commander-in-chief. It's because they took away that pandemic team that Obama had that literally studies every single thing that comes up when as it pertains to viruses and all of that. And they could have prepared for this.
Yes.
Mhm.
But they
Yes.
demolished this pandemic group.
Yeah, and I think it was well said by you, Doc, with how you responded to that. But this is typical of that person that just spoke right now that you just read that quote from. That's typical of the
Yes.
individual that's been hiding in the closet all these years, right? And now he all of a sudden he wants to come out the closet because now we have a president who actually sees things the way he sees them. And so therefore, prior to him coming into office, we didn't see a lot of racism. I mean, it was there, don't get me wrong.
Right.
But now, I mean, it's out where people are out doing things that we didn't typically see prior to his president. So this is typical of the individual that's been in that closet and now he's being brought out and now he's feeling bold where he's going to make these types of responses.
Bilal, you're spot on. And that's one of the things that I would say the one advantage to this presidency is the fact that you see a lot of true colors surfacing. But at the end of the day, let me go back to the comment. Look, anybody that understands leadership, anybody that understands how the structure of leadership operates, look, I run my own business. And at the end of the day, let's say you and Rosa are subcontractors and you go afoul, you mess up. The blame is still on me. I run that business.
Exactly.
I have to take that inherent dysfunction and take that under my leadership and take onus of that. Now, what I do with you and Rosa, that's behind closed doors. We will navigate. But at the end of the day, true leadership is going to take the responsibility for all those that are under that leadership.
Exactly.
So there's no way around that.
Yeah. And like you said, yeah, he's running this business, and this business itself, he paid $750 in taxes.
Wow.
$750 in taxes. How do you run a business like that? How? What does this say about your persona?
Yeah.
You know, that's how he's choosing to run this business that's called America. That's called the United States, where we're all living.
Yes.
Yeah.
Just so we didn't forget.
Yeah. And I mean that just speaks. I mean, if you want to tell people, if you got these people you're leading and you want them to be honest and everything, and here it is, but what I want to see is I want to see him pay those taxes. That's what I want to see. I want to see him to put them on the front lines. Let's see him pay those taxes, because it's unfair to us as American citizens that we have to pay these taxes. And here it is, the commander in chief is not paying. This is supposed to be the example of the people. And so how can you be the example of the people and you cannot whatsoever pay your taxes? How can you impose that upon us? You know, we can flash back to reparations. Come on.
Yeah.
Let's be real about it.
Yeah.
You know.
What do you think, Paulina?
I'm just nodding and nodding and nodding and nodding. Like, if this is all the taxes he pays, then just give us all the same damn rate.
Yeah.
Like, if that, or we make it in that way, right? Everybody just 175 and we're good.
Yeah.
Nobody's gonna complain.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah, and it's a lot that has happened with this presidency that, definitely we can sit here and talk hours and hours about all of the failures and all of the things that he's done to not really in favor of the American population, not only domestically, but like we mentioned, internationally.
Yeah.
Paris Climate Agreement, our allies, NATO, European Union, like it's a whole lot of issues that this administration has just disrupted. And we see it on a day-to-day basis. We see it in his taxes. We see it in the way that people are living in poverty. More than 1.5 million Blacks are unemployed in this country.
Yes.
400,000 small businesses have closed their doors because of an economic fallout. The Black poverty rate is 2.5 times the white poverty rate.
Yeah.
How?
But yet, your point's well taken, Rosa. But yet, after the break.
Right. But yeah, great.
Yeah. Yeah, Facebook audience, thank you for tuning in. You know, we're at one of our breaks right now, and the commercial breaks right now. So we're gonna take this opportunity to kind of, feed, what we're seeing across the line and stuff like that. But we thank you for tuning in every week, and for those of you who this is your first week of tuning in, we ask you to continue to tune in from this day forward because these topics are very hot and they're very potent in what we're, discussing inside of our communities today.
Yeah, and we definitely see you. We see your comments every time we're on here, and we thank you for tuning in. We really appreciate you being on here on this platform. And we try to address your comments as best as we can. We will actually be addressing more comments once we go out of this break. But once again, thank you so much for everything, for tuning in. And I see from Silva, President Trump knows everything, but he didn't disclose anything. What about the issue for today? You know, we're talking about the vice presidential debate, and then we went into a deeper conversation about just this administration and what has been happening. And we discuss anything from tax to his tax record to the levels of unemployment and everything that has happened in his administration. Excellent work. Go ahead. Thank you so much, Nusrat. We really appreciate it. Very much fruitful for future of USA. Yes, we're also praying. We're hopeful for the future of the USA. It's looking a little bit dark nowadays, but we're still hopeful.
Yeah.
And Rosa, I will address that comment if you want me to. If you read it, I will address it. So
Perfect.
okay.
He's reserving his addressing.
With Attorney Zulu Ali, and we're back discussing this vice presidential debate, as well as addressing some of the Facebook comments and followers and stuff like that. And I want to turn this over to you, Doc, and let you address this comment that actually.
Well, can we read that comment again?
Yeah. So, like we said, we read your comments, and we have one comment from Dodge Sherrills, who's been saying, stop using these platforms to promote disinformation. Shame on you. Poor and disadvantaged communities have been supporting the Democrat Party for 70 years. Tell Brother Bashir I can debate his philosophy with facts any day. Tell him Brother Dodge Sherrill said it. What do we say up to that?
well, Mr. George G., let me tell you respectfully, I would love to get you one-on-one and any cohort you bring to the table, and we could talk about it. But let me be real clear. This is not the purpose of the show. So I don't disrespect your words, but let me tell you something. Your perception is just that. Your perception is your reality. No arrogance meant, but I've traveled the world over numerous times. I will bring a worldwide perspective, an international perspective, and you probably only operate from the borders of this country. So your perspective of the narrative in terms of what we're up against, not only in this country, but worldwide, you wouldn't see that. And I wouldn't expect you to see that. So before you jump out there and talk about debating or anything else, we better look at clearly from the perspective of others, what is actually going on in this country.
Yes.
We need to look at the perception of what this country has been perceived worldwide, and we need to look at the rationale of how this country operates. When you talk about the Black experience, the Latino experience, until you have been in my shoes, until you have been through the crisis and the drama I've been through, and until you have to feel the pain and trauma of what we as a people have had to go through under the type of massive slavery, domination, and canceristic crushing through the venue of oppression and suppression, don't talk to me about perceptions. So when you want to debate, I would love to have that, but respecting Brother Ali and this show and all my cohorts here, we are going to go back to our agenda, but I just wanted you to be crystal clear that nobody has any fear of what you're bringing to the table, and we can get down and dirty anytime you are ready, my brother.
Bam.
and that's how you know we really do read your comments.
Yes.
We really do, and it's true. We really are
I want
here
to be brought onto the show.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
true. That's true. And honestly, we just want to let you all know, our viewers, that we hear you out, and this is one of the responses that we give to your comments. You know, we are actively listening, and we thank you for tuning in, and we respect your commentary, and also we give our opinions. This is the show.
Yes.
This is Justice Watch.
Well,
with
that's what I was
attorney
going to say. I think the most important factor we need to understand is this platform is
Mhm.
freedom of speech.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
we all have the right to speak about our opinions and to
Yes.
share our information. This doesn't mean it's disinformation. This doesn't mean that
Exactly.
it's not true or true or false information. It is a platform in which we're sharing our opinions and talking about issues that are not often discussed within this country. So
Exactly.
therefore,
Well said.
if
Exactly.
it's not appreciated, do not listen.
Yeah.
But yeah, on the other hand, one of the issues that hasn't really been talked about in the news is something that came up actually this past week. I don't know if you all heard of the 400 individuals that showed up at the White House
Yes.
with President Trump. So in specific, we have a group called the Blexit Group,
Mhm.
and that is ran by Candace Owens.
Yeah.
So basically, it's blacks leaving the Democratic Party, and that in a way is puzzling. Not because they're leaving the Democratic Party, but just because of the ideology that they possess. That basically racism in this country doesn't really affect people of color.
Mhm.
What do we have to say to individuals?
But you got me riled up now. But I am going to comment on that one. Then I let Bilal jump right
No,
in.
go ahead, brother.
Look, and it's not surprising. This has been the same mindset since the inception of slavery. As Minister Malcolm said it so well, we have the field Negro and we have the slave Negro. You are going to
Mhm.
always have those individuals that are going to line with existing policy, even though it's against their best interest, because they feel some personal self-benefit out of that engagement. And this is what you see with this Black Exit venue. Look, I would never get in there and try to interpret their mindset and what they do, why they do what they do. But when you look at common sense, that's in this case not common practice. When you look at the behavior patterns, and when you look at who is at the end of that short stick, it's us as a people,
Mhm.
Black people, brown people, people of color, and even your marginalized white people.
Yeah.
So from a behavioral standpoint, I would look at that and make the rationale that these people are off base, not what their mindset says,
Mhm.
but how they are counterbalancing and counteracting their own self-interest in the process, as you so well said, Rosa.
And I will say this. Look, I understand their their point of what they are attempting to do, but also I think that it should be kept in mind that look, we promote, we actually advocate people going out and voting, but also understand that it's after the vote that what's going to count. Regardless of who else in office, is you want to stop doing what you're doing once the vote is already cast and once the president is in office? No, you got to continue your fight from that point on, because that doesn't mean a lot of stuff is going to get better. That means that you have to continue your political fight to make sure that people are seen from a equal standpoint, because this is what this country pride itself on. This is what this country stand on. And so therefore, I would say to the people, go out and vote, but don't make it the end of your protest. Don't make it the end of your walk of you just gonna go vote and you're gonna go sit back up on your couch. You got to hold the people accountable that you put in office. You have to hold the fire to them and hold them accountable, even from the day that that person gets into office. Continue to hold them accountable and hold them to their word. You know, and I can't stress that enough, is that we take a back seat once the person get in office. We figure things are going to get right. No, it's not going to get right.
Exactly.
We got to continue to advocate. We got to continue to keep the pressure on. And that's the only way we as a country, or we as Americans, going to get better.
Yeah.
Well, go ahead, Rosa.
Well, I think you're spot on. And I think we've mentioned it before in other shows, how we really advocate for this ownership. You know, for you to own your own business, be financially free, own your own identity,
Exactly.
even in your own community. And part of owning that identity, part of owning that persona that you are, is not only stopping at the voting stands, but going further, you know, getting involved, maybe teaching people about stuff, taking people to places to learn, to engage in discourse that really enables them to see what's going on in our communities.
Well,
You know?
I really piggyback on both of what you said, and I know everybody in this on the show, we all propagate the concept of do for self or suffer. We all propagate the concept that we are going to be the end result of the narrative that we want that's created.
Yeah.
So, back to our caller again, not knowing the context.
Yeah.
Most of us in this room have always pushed a personal agenda that we have driven in the process. We've been affiliated with organizations and entities that have pushed the self-help perspective and not looking for any other outside exterior. So on top of the voting, as was so well said by both of you, we have got to now build that infrastructure that we can take care of ourselves. All we ask is that you stop bombing us, that you stop trying to eradicate and tear it up, and that you stop trying to get in the way of us doing for self,
Exactly.
back to what we need to do.
Yeah.
Yep. And
Spot
so,
on.
man, and man, this is good talk. This is real good talk. But before we kind of go to the end of this show, I want to thank Zulu Ali for allowing us this platform to be able to put the message out. He's not here with us today, but at the same time, he has created this platform for us to be able to talk to people and be able to convey this message to them. Of course, we're going to get feedback from individuals that don't believe as we believe. But if you can look at our panel, our panel is very diverse in terms of age and in terms of age wise and what generation we come from, and so we hit all spectrums whenever we're able to give it to the people, because we want to be able to relate to everybody. Whether it be the millennials, whether it be the people that's born in the 60s. No disrespect. But
I'm wearing with pride.
But we really want to be able to get our message across to the people and let them understand. And also a shout out to Miss Ali. We want to wish you a very happy birthday.
Thank you for listening, Zulu. We love you.
And so this time is up. We thank you for tuning in to Justice Watch Radio with Attorney Zulu Ali. Come back next week, same time, same place. Until then, stay blessed.
Goodbye, everyone.
Yeah, we'll probably get some comments on that show.